My name is Andrew Goddard, and I'm here today to represent the Richmond chapter of the Million Mile March of the Brady campaign to prevent gun violence. I took the liberty of sending each of you a new report yesterday which outlines the correlation between crime gun trafficking and lax state gun laws. I pointed out Virginia's unenviable position very close to the top of the table, and more specifically the pages which show the relationship of the gun show loophole to crime gun trafficking. I hope that you'll be able to read this report at your leisure in order to see how different laws correlate to crime gun activity. Please note, this data refers exclusively to crime guns, not personal protection, hunting or target shooting weapons, and certainly not the weapons held by the gentleman with orange buttons here, which I assure you do not freak me out. These are the good guys. I know that many of you have heard me speak about this subject before, so today I decided to do something different and spend a few moments reminding you of the testimony given by the distinguished gentlemen of the gun lobby on this subject to re-emphasize certain of their points to you. First, I'd like to remind you of the testimony of a gentleman who was mentioned earlier, who was an FFL, but now sells his private collection at gun shows as a private individual. He spoke in September. I want to remind you that he volunteered the information that when he sells guns at a gun show, he always asks to see a prospective buyer's driver's license and always asks them if they have a felony record. I commend him on doing this, as it is the basis of a rudimentary background check, which this individual must believe is important enough to at least attempt it for the comfort of his own conscience. Secondly, I'd like to repeat the testimony of a gun show promoter who spoke to the House Militia and Police Committee earlier this year on this subject. Among other things, he stated that gun shows, I paraphrase, gun shows that in Virginia are so well policed that a convicted felon would not dare to set foot in a show, let alone attempt to buy a gun, as they would inevitably be spotted and presumably leave the premises in handcuffs. He did not mention how juveniles, the most seriously mentally ill, terrorists, out-of-state residents, or domestic abusers would be identified, but I presume he believed that the same pattern applied. I should point out to the committee that this same promoter had a rather informative piece on his website at that very time, which referred to assurances given to him by the ATF that they would not be monitoring future gun shows in Virginia, though they wouldn't allow him to publish the actual letter that attested to that fact. I believe this was something to do with straw man purchases which had been done by the ATF that didn't sit very well with the gun lobby. The same promoter also stated that the vast majority of guns sold by private individuals at gun shows were antiques, which play no part in gun crime or gun violence. I'll leave it to those of us present that have actually been to a gun show to decide if that's a valid point, but only offer the comment that he is entirely correct if you use the rather unusual definition of antique as being not this year's model. Finally, I'd like to speak on behalf of the hobby sellers, or whatever they would like to call themselves, that don't engage in the business of buying and selling guns, but nonetheless buy and sell guns at gun shows. It's not productive for the Commonwealth to decide on the motives of such a seller, as the motives of the seller have no influence on the pain and suffering of gun crime victims. Any attempt to alienate this group or codify them as needing to obtain a special license to sell at gun shows would invariably lead to many of them taking their trade underground, where abuses and diversions would be absolutely impossible to prevent or to trace. These sellers are not in any way responsible for the diversion of guns to ineligible buyers, providing they never sell a gun to an ineligible person. Let's make life simple for them and provide a safe and reliable method for them to know who is eligible and who isn't. Close the gun show loophole and make gun shows in Virginia the safest places for a private individual to make money from selling unwanted or excess guns to safe and reliable, law-abiding Virginia residents only. Please don't mire yourselves in looking to characterize the seller when we're trying to keep certain people from buying.